how's it going? Welcome to South by Southwest.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for doing this. It's crazy town. I haven't been to South by for over 10 years, and I have fond memories of the very early years. Actually speaking on a stage about 12 years ago, transformative storytelling that led to then a connection with Columbia University and ended up doing a storytelling program with Columbia, which was really exciting. So it's really lovely to be back. And actually, I love culture. So, you know, there's the digital brands world of South by Southwest, but then it's infused by music and film, which is great.
Absolutely. And advertising is the center of storytelling. But, you know, back to your first kind of point, when you were here 10 years ago, it seems like storytelling is, again, reinventing itself, because now we have so many different tools, so many different mediums. Social commerce is huge. Totally. AI is unavoidable.
Yeah. Well, we have a framework. I actually, at a prior life, I ran a company called Naked, and we did a lot of work around the dimensions of storytelling and how you, and maybe we didn't even call it storytelling, but the dimensions of communication. But actually, talking of Columbia, we actually created story worlds. You know, what is in a story world? What is the hero content? What is the hygiene content? But I also created over time a periodic table of storytelling, essentially. And if you think of everything in our universe is made up of the chemistry periodic table, I actually use that construct to say that actually stories have so many elements. To your point, we used to tell stories in maybe 3, 4, 5 different ways. Today it's infinite. You know, you have infinite platforms, you have infinite techniques, you have within platform, you have infinite KPIs. And so it's quite interesting to build it out. But you're right. And a place like South by Southwest really, I think, brings a lot of that together, because you're looking at emergent technologies to tell your story through. You're looking at emergent and or existing ways of getting the insights for those stories. And then obviously you have all these partnerships that you can express the story through.
Absolutely.
So it's really exciting time.
So let's double click into the insights part, right?
Yeah.
With AI being everywhere, one of the things that you've said is that AI lacks taste and judgment at this point in time where it is. Do you think it is a matter of humans getting better data in as a raw material to make better judgment calls?
Yes, I think it's the big conundrum, isn't it? And my view is that technology and AI is a new seat at the table, but it can do unbelievable things, and we're seeing new industries of insights being created. The speed by which we can actually iterate through the insights is immense. But ultimately, at this point in time, and I think for a foreseeable future, I say that the human needs to be driving the machine and gaining that insight. And that insight is a judgment. It's a judgment as to not just the prompts, not just what pieces of research that might be aggregated into an LLM or into a copilot or whatever else, or an agent. You know, you need to discriminate, because there's certain sources are going to be more trusted than others. If you just leave it to, you know, an agent or LLM. And so that is judgment, and judgment comes in multiple forms. But I like also using the word taste. You know, taste is such an aesthetic point. So at the moment, there is no LLM that I've actually seen can replicate the taste that an incredible creative mind, that an incredible strategist can adopt. And so it really, you know, the way that we're working is really as faster, is brilliant, but you can iterate. But we can talk more, but I also think that faster and cheaper doesn't mean better.
Right. it's not better. It's not necessarily better in all cases. I do think that, data is one thing, but insights it's a different thing. It's extracting what is the human element and what is really important. For a company like Circana, right, we track 5.8 trillion in consumer spending across the globe, right? We believe in quality, good data.
Yep.
So that's why when it comes to these conversations about AI, and what's training these models, it's really about really having good raw materials to work with and having humans make that judgment call.
Totally. And it's the same partnerships. You will have humans assisting your incredible technologies to aggregate this data at scale. Scale, we used to say qual and quant, and it was so funny because quantitative might historically have been a sample size of 50,000. So I've been, for years saying that's qual now. Quant is trillions, hundreds of thousands. We've got an audience platform that has over 250 million, so we can slice and dice audiences. That's qual today.
Yeah.
But where you can really, but with not supplemental, but with insights that can infuse it, and now you can have an end-to-end solution. So you don't have as many bridges as you used to have in the past. But yeah, I agree. I love the technology age. I love the AI age. But I think that it's always a delicate dance between the human and the machine. And I think we're still trying to figure it out. One thing that I'm doubling down on the human side, if I may, is really training the workforce of the future.
Okay.
So this is a very much human element, So 80% of what we learned in the past will not make you succeed in the future, because the future is so dynamically being changed today. But this is the one time we can't be lazy. We need to lean in even more as to what does leadership look like in a technology-driven age. How do you enable people to feel safe to work with technology-enabled tools while also balancing that human dimension, which is collaboration, ideas that can be iterated, infused by that technology. So never was there a time where we're investing in more technology, but I've actually equally doubled my investment around training a workforce of the future. What does leadership? We just did a leadership lab, actually.
That's
and
fantastic.
We're maybe 10 leadership labs in now. And we're really saying, what does it look like for our future leaders to work in this new environment? What does empathy look like in technology-driven?
I truly believe, I like the notion of that soft skills are really the durable skills, right? Soft skills need almost a rebranding, and they need a better PR team.
Totally.
Because I think in years past, soft skills have gotten just written off, whereas the technology and the hard skills have been the ones that have been prioritized in hiring in companies. But those are the things that change over time. New technology comes in, those hard skills are no longer relevant, but it's the soft skills, the leadership abilities, the resilience, the curiosity, the ability to work together. All of those things are incredibly important as our industry changes. I had a really great conversation earlier this week with someone that in our time frame, we're seeing two big things that are changing fundamentally how consumers are shopping, and that's Google search, and the second one is now AI, and that's within a 20 year span of each other. So the soft skills and wanting to lean in and actually be curious about these technologies are what's going to win.
Yeah, and I totally agree. Almost everything is up for grabs at the moment. So obviously, quote unquote, this word pivot, everyone is pivoting, but how you pivot and what is the long term, what is the hype cycle versus a long term value creation out of any technology. So sometimes I think we have to be mercenary and obviously use the tools at our disposal, even if they get disintermediated. I think we are going to have to parallel track some research and insight programs because we have new tools that obviously might be faster, attribution, MMMs, things like that. But we don't want to chuck the baby out the bathwater. So sometimes you have to kind of keep some legacy models while you transition to a new model. That's actually adds more complexity to the equation, because sometimes they can contradict each other. These insights can contradict each other. But I think it all comes back to culture. And again, I'd say training is a component of culture, your workforce of the future. But I think that we need to empower people. So I want an organization that is culturally fit, for safety, for trust, for experimentation, for restlessness, and all those great values that some of those are quite soft. Yeah. You were talking about these hard skills. The hard skill is, can you slice and dice audiences? Maybe you understand data, you understand, but then it's the data then aligned to storytelling. Absolutely. Storytelling, I think, is it's been around as a science, as an art, and everything in between. But data storytelling is going to be, I think, one of the most important values of brand marketeer, agency, research company, insights companies. Absolutely. We're awash. We don't need any more data points. I feel like we're just awash. And we don't need 180-page decks. Maybe that's the justification that we did all the hard work. Yeah. I think we need the insights from that. And in a world of vested interests as well, you have multiple data points, and everybody, because a lot of the data points, unlike your company, which I think is top down, you're looking at incredible categories, you're looking at the entirety of the audience. But in a lot of the world of marketing and media, a lot of research and data insights were bottom up. So they were siloed depending on the discipline or the platform or otherwise. And really, most often they were in service of the manufacturing plant of that platform. Sure. So no one ever got surprised by, NBC saying it's NBC now, what was the question? Or it's Microsoft now, what was the question? Or Google now, what was the question? Or Snap, what was the question? Or whoever it happens to be. And I think in that world of intended and unintended vested interests, who is the data storyteller that can actually Sherpa you or a brand through all those attribution points, incrementality points, but actually not allow a race to the bottom and give bottom of funnel full credit for everything that happens throughout the funnel.
Because at some point, I think consumers are already really sharp at distinguishing what is kind of, that sort of sweet, quote unquote, snake oil, what doesn't necessarily resonate, what's just being shown as a way, and it's not necessarily storytelling. So in your view, right, it's not, you've said that full funnel is non-negotiable, right? It's not brand or performance, it's brand and performance. Totally. And what the other thing that we're seeing on our side with MMM benchmarks is that you have to have an always on presence as a brand now, because even 4 weeks of going dark, you're spending more money than you started out spending to kind of claw your way back to the position that you were before. So where do you think that most brands are getting it wrong? Is it one of those things where they're, investing in one and not the other? Or is it something else that you're seeing?
Because we're in this chaotic evolution of commercial creativity, commercial marketing, in service of business results and business outcomes, I think, and because of the tenure of a lot of, relationships, and the speed at which the change is happening, I think everyone can be forgiven a little bit for being very tactical. And I think literacy around performance mindset, the technologies that will collapse what is a brand, and this notion brand is you can do both at the same time. And you obviously think of a funnel, and it depends. Obviously, some there are very long customer journeys, and some are very CPG category can be recency. How do you? But controversially, I think people are getting it wrong because they're believing in the CFO. The CFO needs to be educated. Right. CMOs need massive upskilling. I think, and there is no one size fits all. A lot of people went through marketing programs, the big revered marketeers came from Procter & Gamble, Unilever,
Right.
PepsiCo, Coca-Cola. Now they're coming from Silicon Valley, DTC brands. They're, you know, you've got this new CMO that obviously is as much system integrator, understands technology, understands data points, which is fine, but they also then need to understand and layer on the value of the brand,
And
the intangible and the tangible.
Absolutely.
But you know, if you're going to follow a CPA, cost per action or something, it could be an arms race to the bottom.
Right. So you know, today's CMO needs to have both the
so
left
yes,
brain and the right brain.
It's you know, it is quite chaotic out there, depending on the category, but dependent on, you know, the size of the company. But what is true is that a challenger now with a lower budget can, you know, seriously dent a bit. We've seen the erosion of, you know, big retail, or the big erosion of, you know, what used to be dominant brands. And you just have to look at a CPG shelf today. You know, you look at the beverage category and you just see, you know, the multitude of choice out there. Everyone's shouting for not only shelf space, and that's another question, retail media and how obviously that has grown, but obviously maybe sometimes in service of shelf space, versus obviously the consumer. And then the long term, we've seen fads come and go because suddenly, you know, someone gets the cultural zeitgeist, and but then is it long term sustainable? But everyone, you know,
it's out for debate.
I mean,
it makes our industry very fun and reinventing.
Totally.
You know,
totally. But this is his point.
Yes,
you know, even
exactly.
for marketeers, 80% of what I might have learned over a storied career might not make me succeed in the future. So everyone's trying to embrace AI. Everyone's looking at the way we can do it. You know, but what it's done is the pendulum has shifted to more immediate, you know, responsive media that can show some dashboard that a CFO feels confident that it's quote unquote more than just marketing spend. It's, you know, it has an ROI in it.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Paul, I am getting the
light
that
oh my goodness.
That our time is up. So this has been such an informative and great, candid conversation. Thank you for the time. This has been fantastic.
Wonderful. Love our partnership.
Yes, likewise.